Question goes to Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris.
This is my first time appearing before the COVID-19 Special Committee of the Whole, and I'd like to take the opportunity to pay tribute to all the healthcare workers, frontline workers, and essential workers across the country who've served so diligently and selflessly during the crisis. And I wish also to offer my condolences to the families and loved ones of the far too many Canadians who have lost their lives due to this disease. A special tribute also to Snowbird, Captain Jenn Casey, and also the crew of the RCAF Cyclone helicopter crash. Mr. Chair, the fiscal situation facing Newfoundland and Labrador is very bleak and getting worse as each day passes. Since 2008, we've been considered a have province and received no equalization payments. This year, our province is facing a deficit, however, of $2 billion due to loss of revenues and royalties, much due to the COVID-19. While Nova Scotia and New Brunswick each received $2 billion in equalization. We were happy to contribute when we could do so, but now we need help. Will the Government of Canada adjust the equalization program or find another way to ensure that Newfoundland and Labrador is not unfairly burdened as a result of these circumstances?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question and for his kind words to all Canadians. I'd just like to assure him that we have been working together with the group at Finance in Newfoundland and Labrador to understand the issues and challenges facing that province, which are significant. Certainly what we've seen during the course of this pandemic is measures to be of significant support. Things like the top up for essential workers have been important across the country, including in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Bank of Canada's decision to move forward and support provinces in the issuance of their provincial debt has been important for many provinces and certainly of significant importance for Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to tell the member that we continue to recognize that the programs that we have, like the stabilization program, for example, are things that need to be looked at in the context of changing circumstances. We know it's been decades since that's been reviewed. And of course, with the equalization program, there's a regular review every 5 years, and that will be something that will take into account the considerations of Newfoundland and Labrador and other provinces to make sure that we come to a good conclusion.
Mr. Speaker, that was eating up a lot of my time there, but that didn't answer the question as to what we're going to do for the next 5 years, waiting for that change. Mr. Chair, the fishing industry support plan recently announced provides a number of positive programs, including allowing fish harvesters to use last year's catch numbers to qualify for EI because of the anticipated shorter season this year due to COVID-19. But fish plant workers were left out. Will the Minister of Fisheries or Finance announce today that fish plant workers can do the same and use last year's weeks to qualify for EI if necessary, so that they will not go without income after the fishing season?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Honourable Member for his question. We have put in place a number of measures to address concerns that we've heard from harvesters directly, including the extension of EI to make sure that they are able to qualify next year or this year based on last season's earnings. We continue to look at measures that we can address the seasonal workers in fish plants as well as crew on boats to make sure that industry is addressed. Those concerns are addressed. We will work with the industry, with the people in the provinces to make sure that we are addressing all of these concerns as we go forward. And I look forward to having more to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before I recognize Mr. Harris, could you either bring your mic closer to your mouth, Mr. Harris, or closer to the computer, one or the other? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Thank you, Chair. That's as you look at it, but what we want to know is, will you do the same thing for fish plant workers as you're doing for fish harvesters?
I do want to remind the member to address the question to the chair, the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have said all along no Canadian will be left behind. We're continuing to work with the industry to make sure that we address concerns as we go forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Harris.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, we all know that Indigenous Canadians are overrepresented in our federal prisons, and a far higher percent of them are also serving their sentence in prison rather than in the community, thereby suffering a greater chance of infection from COVID-19. Why then has the parole board cancelled or indefinitely postponed parole hearings for Indigenous inmates who wish the assistance of an elder in support of their case, which is the choice of some 40% of Indigenous inmates seeking release on parole? Does the government not recognize this as a discriminatory practice?
Although the time is up, I'll allow for an answer from the minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to assure the member we do understand the importance of the presence of elders at those parole hearings. Unfortunately, during the COVID, steps have been necessary to protect the health and safety of the people participating in those entire processes. But we're working very hard to ensure that elder participation can occur virtually until it's such time as we're able to do it in person. We do recognize its importance.